So I wanted to do a video reading from a letter that I got from a friend of mine, and this friend is what I've come to know as Karl the Coffin maker, and I did a previous video telling of a funny story where his van broke down and he delivered the coffin on a public service bus that was full of old people, and because they were all looking at him and gossiping between themselves, as he got off the bus he stood there with his coffin at the bus stop, and because his van had broken down he had to deliver the coffin by hand. So he got the bus, and as he got off the bus he turned and spoke to the audience that was all old people, passengers, and he said, all of you have been talking about the coffin, he said, but in time, perhaps for some of you, not too far distant future, you will require my services just like this man did. And then he got off the bus. Well, behind this great sense of humour, Karl has fought some pretty heavy battles, and the one is with alcohol. And so I really want to, what started me on this was that I wanted to read, with his permission, I wanted to read his story. So I'll read it and change it very, very slightly, okay? But it says, I used to run an art class for a few years for alcoholics seeking help. Worst drug in the world that ruins lives. Both my parents were alcoholics, which made my father a violent man, and his wife, and a wife beater, and my mother drank 2 large bottles of brandy daily before going to a local bar where she only drank triple brandies. She was carried home nightly. It ruined her life, as she used to be a concert pianist, very much in demand and so talented, but she lost it all. She was like a Jekyll and Hyde, a character I'm certain is based on an alcoholic. I myself am a registered recovering alcoholic with my doctor, as for over 30 years alcohol controlled my life. Living next door to a bar, 17 of those years never helped. Now thankfully I control my intake of alcohol and make certain I don't visit any bars. The odd thing about this evil drug is it gives you a high that never lasts more than 10 minutes on any drinking session. So 10 minutes in any session of drinking, your brain keeps chasing that high, demanding more intake of alcohol, but in most cases 24 hours will only hit it one time. I sought help many years ago, thankfully, after a feeling I was trapped in a cage with no way out. Counselling helped by talking to others with the same problem. I returned to doing my artwork instead of going to bars, drinking, wasting money, and more so time. It's been available cheap everywhere, which is also a huge problem and a temptation. And he says, 15 years ago I smoked my last cigarette. Used to smoke at least 30 cigarettes a day and 10 cigars on an average. Another terrible and very expensive vice for your health and your finances. I had a heart attack, thought I was dying. From that day I never smoked again or felt better health-wise. We can all change our ways, certainly after health warnings. When I look back on my life, all the smokers and drinkers my own age have died, and sure, if they had also changed their lifestyle, they would still be living. So it's an incredible story, And the end of one thing here, which I wanted to say, because he repeats some of it. He says, I also realized I had a drink problem, as not one photo I used to have of myself had always had a beer in front of me or in my hand. Certainly glad I found a way out of my cage, with no way out it seemed. One day, slowly at a time, I beat those demons inside myself. Every day after the first day of stopping makes it easier, but remind myself so easy to return to ruining my life. Let me see if I can find that one thing which made, so it says, if you wish, I was talking about using this letter as the basis for trying to get over to people just how dangerous the drug is, because it's so easily obtainable. He said, being an artist myself, he said, oh, if you wish, I've read many in the years of fighting drink, the demon that destroy many good people. And that's how I feel too, even though I never was an alcoholic. And I never actually, even when I was drinking, I drank for the effect, which is what all of these kids are doing that I'm now watching. Just not even liking the taste of it, just drinking. So being an artist myself, I studied many other famous artists. Every one of them had alcohol problems in their lives. Oddly, many famous paintings featured alcohol and its drinking. He said, people, where is it? People, sadly, don't stop dying just because it's Christmas time or start of a new year. Cold weather makes many old people take their last breath, and probably more so now. Few people in the UK can afford to heat their homes, which is a comment on how the situation is in the UK. What is that one particular place? He says here, I've given my story of living with alcohol addiction and taking control of it after a lifetime of addiction, controlling myself. It's a living nightmare that few people will ever admit to these demons that truly take control of every part of those affected lives. And that's the big thing, is that it's not an occasional thing. Once it takes a grip, it's not an occasional thing. And so now I'm even suspect of those who say I'm a social drinker. In other words, I have a drink when it's a social thing. Now, I was talking to one of our students today, and I got her to read some of these writings that my friend Karl has written to me, to try to make her understand. And she was telling me about how peer pressure is what can start people off, and then when it gets its grip on you, it takes you along with it. You take it at first, and then it takes you. And that's really very true. And she was telling me about the same problem that I explained that I had, that I wanted to focus more on being a great musician than to having these rave-up parties. It was of more interest to me. And I found that being in a band, I was not popular. I was unpopular for my beliefs about alcohol. People don't want, even if you're not saying it, people don't want to know that you don't approve of drinking when they're knocking them back and getting drunk. And so it rang true to me what this young lady was saying, that peer pressure had made it so that she began to associate drinking with having fun, because her friends were saying, oh, come along, just have a little and just have fun. And she did. And of course, what happens is that the body starts to need a little to get straight. I watched a movie once, Stone Cold, I think it was, and the man is a cop, and he gets fired for having alcohol on his breath, and he gets fired from the force. He's a policeman, but actually, instead of firing him, they gave him a chance, and they made him the chief of police in a very small seaside town. And this woman that stops by while he's sitting in his car and says to him, I understand that you had a drinking problem and that you were fired for being drunk. And he said, and he explains, no, I wasn't fired for being drunk. I'd had a lot to drink the night before, and I just had another drink in the morning to straighten me up. And that's the thing, that once the alcohol gets a grip, you need it so it can straighten you up. And that means that the craving for the alcohol, which causes various different effects on different people, but can make the skin crawl, when you need that drink, and you need that to straighten up, just to get feeling normal again. So anyway, I will read you more about these various stories that I get, which are incredible, and more about how people have beaten these things. So these are, in some cases, in part, are harrowing stories, and then in other cases they are great success stories of how people have beaten the odds against these great challenges. Thanks for looking in, and bye for now.